Well, guys, it is the next day. It's actually kind of cloudy. Looks a little rainy, but it's pretty cool. It almost feels like fall. Crazy. But anyhow, I see very little reaction going on in here. I see nothing going on over here other than the fact that that's the wrong color. And it's got some kind of a silvery looking sediment in the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up out here and see if we can't figure out what that brown stuff is and see if we need to add some more acid to this. So we will get back at you in just a bit. Okay guys, so I've done a little bit of research on this. This is what I think. Alright, now I got to remind you guys, my knowledge is practical knowledge on this. I am not a chemist. I did not take chemistry. So most of my knowledge about chemistry is just practical knowledge. I tried to look up our dental alloys, and what I came up with, now this, like I said, this held under 10 karat gold acid on the testing plate, and it partially held under 14 karat gold. What I was able to find is that noble white metals that are used for dental alloys are many times gold, palladium, and silver. So what I am thinking is that this is actually my gold sponge, what is left of the gold from that white alloy that we put in it. The color, the brown color, I cannot figure out. I don't know if it's a reaction between nitric acid and cobalt, because there's also sometimes cobalt in dental materials. But what I'm going to do is actually put this in another a little smaller beaker than this. I'm going to put a little bit more 35% nitric acid on it and see if we get a reaction. I am thinking that this is my gold. This silver or silvery powder, I believe, is going to be palladium. I am not going to know until I get it out of there and melt it and test it and whatever, but melting it will kind of tell me what it is, because if it's very easy to melt, you know, it's not palladium. If it's harder to melt, it could very well be palladium, but it can also be nickel, because nickel is also harder to melt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just set this stuff aside. There should also be some silver in this solution. Again, I have no idea. You know, I've never really messed with that much dental scrap, at least white dental scrap. Most of what I've done was yellow gold dental scrap, and it was back in the day. I haven't done any in a long time. So, but we're going to test it for silver and in this fluid. I did do a stannous test on this, and it is showing positive. I mean, there may even be some platinum in it. I have absolutely no idea about this. So what I'm going to do is, just like I said, set this aside for a little bit. I am going to go ahead and put this in this little beaker, and I have about, I've got my last 100 mils of nitric here that I'm going to add to my jewelry batch over here that's still on the burner. So I'm going to actually put this in there and put just a touch of it in there and see what happens. So anyway, we're going to get back to this later on. This was only, you know, a couple of grams. So, you know, and it actually looks about right. If that's the gold and that is palladium, that's what we should have gotten out, about that much. So anyway, like I said, I'll get back to you. Right now I'm going to go ahead and get this other stuff, get this last bit of acid into that, put this in here and test it. So we'll be back at you in just a bit. Okay guys, what I've done is I've taken, I took a clean pipette and took out some of this liquid and put it in this test tube, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop some HCl in it, and I'm going to see if we get a silver chloride or a chloride of some kind forming. So let's see what happens. That should have been more than enough to drop out any silver. and I'm not seeing too much of a reaction. We did cloud up a little bit, but I'm just going to leave that set now for a while. Okay guys, we are going to actually bring you in on one more test. We are just going to check this, the stuff from the jewelry. We're going to, got a clean pipette, we're going to actually test it for silver. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that down in there. And I'm tossing that pipette because I'm not going to use it again. And I have a couple more things to do right quick before I do this, so I'll get back at you in just a second. Okay guys, while I was off camera, I denoxed this with a touch of urea, and I actually doubled, maybe a little more than doubled the volume of water. What we're going to do now is we're just going to put a few drops of HCl in it, and we're going to see if we got any silver in this. So and it looks like we are getting some silver chloride, most definitely, so it does contain some silver. Let me get that mixed up, get it down there to the bottom. I actually have a test tube mixer, but it's in the house and I don't feel like going and getting it. But we definitely have some silver in there. So that's what we wanted to check. So we will be removing the silver from this down the road. Right now, like I said, we're just going to concentrate on finishing up that gold. So we'll get back at you guys in a bit. Okay guys, I just wanted to show you that we are continuing on with our copper and quarted gold, dissolving the copper out of it. So once again, we're just going to leave that sit. I just wanted to touch base with you and show you that we're doing that. I'm still fiddling with this other stuff. To be perfectly honest with you, I think I'm just going to pour it in a jar and keep it. And maybe somewhere down the line, I'll figure out exactly what it is. I am going to try and rinse that little powder off and see if I can get it in a dish and see if it'll melt. But anyway, so we'll get back at you, like I said, when we get this down into our gold sponge and we're ready to start processing it. So we'll be back at you all in a little while. Okay guys, we've got this little bit of whatever this powder is dried off. I'm actually going to put it in this little tiny dish, and we're going to see if we can get it to melt up into a little bead, so we can kind of test it and see what it is. I preheated this dish because I knew that I was going to be putting a very fine powder in it, so when I did that, I wanted it, the borax to hold it down. So let's see what we get. It's a very, very, very fine powder, so I'm going to have to be really careful that I don't blow any out of the dish. Okay guys, after about 10 minutes of trying to melt this stuff, I'm just giving up. It is not melting at all, and I mean, I got it white hot. It has remained just like it was. So I therefore would say that it is, I don't know, tungsten or something along those lines, because it is not going to melt. So that is that. Like I said, I'm going to put this stuff in a jar and just leave it, because maybe somebody out there can tell me, what this is, because I have no idea. This is the color of the fluid that came off. It's like a brown, golden brown. At first I was thinking palladium or something else, but that powder did not even, usually you'll get a little tiny bits or tiny pieces that'll start balling up. Nothing in this balled up. So I am absolutely convinced that it is definitely not noble metal, because I got hot enough to melt rhodium, I believe. So, alrighty, we'll get back at you in a bit. Our copper gold inquartation is going along pretty good. Maybe a few more hours and we'll be ready to get to work on that. So we will be back at you guys in a little while. Okay, everybody, I just wanted to show you where we are right now. We have actually poured off our copper nitrate that contains some silver, so we're going to actually hang on to that and process it a little bit later. I don't know yet if I'm going to do it in this video or not. I may, just to show our total recovery. We actually have our sponge gold in a little safety pan right now, and I'm actually turning the heat up on that. We've rinsed it several times with distilled water, but we are actually going to go ahead and boil it for a while in distilled water. Probably do that a couple times, make sure we get all the nitric off of it. Then I'm actually going to put it into aqua regia, or we're going to make an aqua regia, and we are going to refine this down again, filter it off, and see how much gold we ended up with. So I just wanted to touch base with you. I was working on that here. Let me see, where'd I put it? It's actually back here in the back, up there. That's our brown liquid from our dental stuff. I'm going to just hang on to this liquid because I don't know what is in it. You saw that we tried to melt in our little melt dish that powder that was in the bottom, and it was not meltable. It had to be tungsten, or it had to be something that's, super high temperature to melt, because I heated it white hot and we got nothing out of it. Now, you remember when I poured that out before we started messing with it, there was a little piece of sponge that I thought was would be the gold part of that dental stuff. Actually, I did it off camera because my battery was dead. I had to recharge the camera. But I did take that little piece of sponge and was able to get it to melt. Now, it melted kind of hard and it turned out white, or silvery color. So we're going to take that inside right now. In fact, I've already got it in there, and we're going to test it and see what it is, because that was the only thing we were able to salvage out of that dental stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and move back inside. I'm going to let this stuff boil up and clean up for a bit, and we're going to go test that that little white piece of metal that we got to melt and see what we ended up with out of that. So we will be right back at you in a bit. Okay, guys, we are inside, and this is actually that little sponge that was left out of that brown, from the dental stuff, out of the brown liquid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my gold testing kit. Now, if this is gold, which it shouldn't be, because it's white, and it should actually be yellow, even if we were doing white gold, the way we were refining it or the way we did it, it should have came out yellow. So this is not gold, but many times we have been hoping for palladium, and I know that some dental material actually has palladium in it. It's very possible that this is palladium, because it did hold on the test stone under some test acids. So what we are actually going to do is we're going to take 10 karat gold test acid. Now we're going to put a little drop on this. If nothing happens, I have no idea what it is. If it turns black, it's silver, which it can't be silver because we dissolved everything in nitric acid, and the silver would have went into the nitric acid. If it is palladium, this will actually turn a shade like a light yellow, or a yellowish color when I put this 10 karat acid on here. So hopefully, finally, for once, we may have gotten a little bit of palladium. So what I'm going to do is just put a little drop of this on here, and we're going to let it sit for a minute or two, and we're going to see what happens. So we have a little drop of our 10 karat acid. I'm starting to see a little reaction. So we'll just let it go for a minute. Well, oh boy, folks. I think we actually finally got a little bit of palladium. It's turning a yellowish, almost a chartreuse yellow-green around the outside. I'm going to let it sit on there a little bit more, see if we get a stronger yellow color. And now I can see it without my headset. It is definitely turning yellow. It is not turning black, which would be silver. No reaction would be a high karat gold, which I would have figured would be impossible because it should be yellow. If it was gold, that metal should actually have melted up yellow. And I am seeing a strong yellow color. So guys, we actually got a little bit of palladium. So we were able to extract the palladium from that white dental material, basically doing the same way or the same thing that you do when you're extracting the gold. So there should also be a little bit of gold in there, but that powder you saw, I tried to melt it and it would not melt. So real quick, let me throw this on the scale and see what we got. We actually got 0.36, so we got about 1/3 of a gram of palladium. So that's pretty cool. Alrighty guys, I'm going to get back outside and I'm going to check that gold, see if it's boiling off and cleaning up, and we'll be back at you in a bit. So there's finally some palladium, boys and girls. We actually got a little bit of palladium. Alright, so we will be back at you guys in a bit. Okay, we are back outside and we are continuing. I just poured off our second boil rinse. We've rinsed it several times with distilled water, and now this is going to be the third where we're actually boiling it in distilled water. Even though we're going right to aqua regia, I mean, you could have done that right off the bat, you know, because the nitric acid isn't going to hurt anything. The reason you do this, though, is to actually get rid of all the copper. In other words, you want all of this, you want all of that stuff out of it before you put it in aqua regia, because you don't want, you know, what's the point of doing all this and then having copper contaminant in it? So we're going to let this boil one more time. It's almost coming to a boil now. I'm going to let it boil for a few minutes, make sure there's no blue color in the water at all. And if it's good and clean, then we're going to go ahead and take this on into aqua regia and dissolve our gold. So we will be back at you in a little bit, because you know what they say, a watch pot never boils. So we're out of here for a few minutes. Alrighty guys, we'll be back at you in a bit. Okay, we have completed our rinse. It's all cleaned out now. We've actually kept our sponge gold shape really well, which is what you want. So we are ready to go to aqua regia, and I think right now at this point I'm going to go ahead and knock off for the day, and we will get back at you tomorrow and do our refine and our filter and our drop and hopefully our pour in the next video. May not get the pour in, it all depends. If this drops out fast, we'll be able to do it. If it doesn't, well, you know how that goes. But anyway, we are all ready to go to the next step. So we will see you guys in the next video.